But I just wanted to say thank you, first of all, to Terence Blackman for inviting me to chair this panel discussion on emerging business opportunities. I'm the co-founder of Guyana Speaks with Rod Westmus, who spoke earlier, but I also happen to work here in Senate House in the Institute of Historical Research as a research fellow working on the Windrush scandal. So as you can imagine, this is kind of like a nice bit of light relief for me. I should also mention that I'm not Guyanese born, and so I know, shame on me, but also I like to tease my husband and tell him that I married him for his Guyanese passport, which I now have. Just in time for the oil find, I'll have you know. But of course, it's a huge pleasure to be here chairing a panel that aims to explore how the UK diaspora can be leveraged to partake in Guyana's development. So I just want to introduce the panel, first of all, relatively quickly. Immediately here on my right is Dr. Rosh Khan. He's currently the head of ACE Consulting Group, the president of the Masterclass Institute, and also the founder of Social Rank Media. Just for a little bit of extra information, he's also a councillor with the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce and Industry, chairman of the Services Committee of the Guyana Manufacturing and Services Association, and a director with the American Chamber of Commerce. He also happens to be the head of Guyana's National Small Business Week, which was launched for the first time in 2022 with great success. And then seated immediately next to him is Faisal Khan. Many of you may have recognized him, those of you who, like me, are obsessed with Dragon's Den. He achieved global recognition on that BBC TV show when he and his partner won an investment from billionaire James Caan for their Peel P50, which is listed in the Guinness Book of Records as the world's smallest car. But on to more serious matters, Faisal is the CEO of the Geissens group of companies, including GKB. He led the formation of Geissens Oil and Gas in 2017 with a focus on supporting ExxonMobil operations locally in Guyana. He's also a well-respected FIFA International Football Head Scout 2017, officially representing Malta and making history for Guyana in 2011 and 2019. And of course, I'm sure he'll be speaking later about the British Chamber of Commerce in Guyana. But I'm going to introduce now Michelle Small, who is sitting at the end. Michelle is a development finance professional, a strategic, resourceful, and award-winning international banker with over 25 years overseeing strategy, policy, and investments within the environmental, social, and governance and commercial real estate sectors. She is currently an independent consultant specializing in all aspects of real estate investment and financing in emerging markets. We're really delighted to have them here today, so please put your hands together just to give them a warm welcome. Thank you. Over to you, Rosh.
Isn't Juanita amazing? Let's give her a round of applause as well. I am very cognizant. Can I pull this off? Yeah, great. I'm very cognizant of time, so I get to use one of my favorite phrases. You know, the being part of the second panel, I get to say all protocols observed. Done. First and foremost, thank you to the organizers, to Terence and everybody that has participated in putting this together. And what I'd like to do, if we can get, Tony, if you can help me with that, yes? Perfect. We're going to quickly go through a couple of slides and talk about our homeland, our Guyana, or what I, in more recent times, like to call 83,000 square miles of opportunity. But let me preface what I'm about to say with something that's a little left field. And that is, investing in Guyana isn't just about business. It's about heritage. It's about identity. It's about culture. It's about strengthening the bond with Guyana, and it's about building something and being part of the transformation, because I really believe when we look back 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years from now, we're going to talk about this period. We're in the midst of the transformation that's taking place. And so what I'd like to do is just provide a very quick macro look and then try to get as actionable as possible, because I kind of rejigged a little bit of my presentation after I got a little flavor of the conversation last night. And what came through to me was, let's get specific about what some of the opportunities are. So we'll get there. And I start with this. This is really interesting if you haven't seen this before. Very important document that came out on June 12th, 2023. And this is from Bank of America, the Global Research Department. And I want you to carefully look at the usage of the words that were used. Tales from Guyana, Part 1, on the cusp of a golden age. That's interesting words coming from the Bank of America. Now, what's this golden age all about? Why are we on the cusp of this golden age? Well, it's one of the fastest growing economies in the world, and just so we can quantify that, growth of 37.2% in 2023, but if you disaggregate, okay, there's oil growth and then there's non-oil growth, we're talking about growth of 9.5%, which is amazing if you benchmark this against any economy in the world. And so oil and gas has really served as a catalyst for all the peripheral and adjacent non-oil and gas sectors as well. And if you're thinking about, excuse me, if you're thinking about doing business in Guyana, you have to understand that when you look at the population, it may not seem very attractive if you're looking at just taking care of the domestic consumption in Guyana. So you have to understand that the Guyana play is more than a Guyana play. The Guyana play is a South American play. The Guyana play is a regional play. With the road and the infrastructure that's getting built to Brazil, with the connectivity that's happening with Suriname, with all the trade agreements that are in play, we're talking about tens of millions of people that are potentially in play that you could get your products and your services out to. I won't talk too much about the discoveries. We got a lot of that earlier. But it is important to talk about the Local Content Act, because I think there's a misconception around the Local Content Act. It's not anti-foreign, it's pro-Guyanese. And it's how can we incorporate as many Guyanese as possible along this journey that we're going to go on with this transformation. And so if you look at the actual act, as of right now, it ring fences 40 areas that I'm sure will get revised in the not too distant future. And so the idea is, what capacity could we build in Guyana? How could you be part of that capacity building? How could you help build capacity? And then how can you advocate and push government to expand those 40 areas to include other areas that aren't currently identified on that schedule? There's lots of expansion taking place. You heard about road infrastructure earlier, ports, bridges, hotels. There's about 6 or 10 hotels that are getting constructed. We'll talk about that very quickly. FDI into Guyana has grown by 110%, which is astronomical. And we got some flavor earlier about the carbon credits program as well, which is a very strong signal for what's to come. Now, Alistair, I know you set up some broad parameters, but the numbers I'm informed are probably somewhere around 73 billion, if not more, over the next 30 years. I think I'm trying to use conservative numbers. And I borrow this slide from our colleagues at GoInvest. It's the Guyana Office for Investment. And I borrow this because at every chart you look at, they all trend in one direction. They all trend in one direction. And so, you know, for those in the room that are private sector, that buy stock, if Guyana was a stock, right? If Guyana was one GY and it was coming across, you know, on the ticker, you know, while you watch the news, now would be a great time to buy the Guyana stock, because where Guyana's going. But the question then becomes, well, how do I buy the Guyana stock? How do I participate in this transformation that everybody's talking about? And I know this is an incredibly busy slide, and I've probably got 30 seconds left on stage, but I will certainly circulate this with Terrence so that we can share this. But if you look at all the different sectors, from agriculture to manufacturing, energy to ICT, tourism, to all the national projects that are taking place, health, if you look at all these areas, there are major needs that are being conveyed to the private sector, whether local, whether regional, or whether international, that is saying, come and support, come and be a part of this process. Mega opportunities, for example, in agriculture. There's a very strong, new, but highly productive. 1 minute, I got you. A corn and soya project that's taking place, and I want to mention this quickly because it's, it shows what's possible. A couple of years ago, not even a couple, maybe less than 2 years ago, they embarked on corn and soya production in Guyana. By 2025, they'll be self-sufficient. Post 2025, they'll be able to export corn and soya from Guyana to meet the regional needs. And so we talk about, for example, in agriculture, 25 by 25, which is how can we reduce the regional food import bill by 25% by the year 2025. Ambitious, but possible if we get the right partners and the right supporters in this process. I want to mention quickly that, I think being part of the diaspora is an advantage. I think we need to leverage the diaspora. Being part of the diaspora means that you have access to people, you have access to networks, you have access to knowledge. And how could we tap into the Rolodex that you have, the folks that you know that you have proximity with, to create stronger and better collaborations and partnerships with those that are in Guyana? And to wrap up, I'm not even going to go through this, but this is a business roadmap. If you're thinking about mobilizing in Guyana, these are some considerations, things you could do, steps 1 through 6. So, okay. All right, sure. I'll leave it up, but with those words, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that. That's given us a great entry into the discussion. I guess, let's looking at this slide here. Let's just talk about the opportunities that you see happening in Guyana, both for local companies, but in particular for the UK diaspora. I don't know, Faisal, so let's start with you.
Yes, Madam Chairman. Good afternoon. My mouth's big enough. I don't need the mic, but I'll go anyway. So to Dr. Blackman, congratulations to the team. This is a fantastic event for everybody that's made time to come on a busy, work day or school day, as we say. Well done. To Chairperson's comment, I'd like to start by saying Marcus Garvey famously said, "Africa is for Africans at home and abroad." As far as I'm concerned, Guyana is for Guyanese at home and abroad. So for many years, when I say many years, probably the last 5 to 6 years, a number of us, of course, I'm not born Guyanese, I was born in Wimbledon, grew up in a very proud Guyanese family. My mother, Pauline, is in the crowd with my stepfather. I used to cry as a child coming back from Guyana, had a deep affinity. And, about 10 years ago, decided to make the plunge and move from the UK to Guyana, work full time. It was very difficult, very different places. Having said all of that, what a number of us have done for a number of periods is continue to go to government, and both administrations will say, look, to Dr. Peter in the second row's point, how are we going to help Guyana keep its British connections? We're turning into a mini America, as far as I'm concerned, taking my Britcham hat off, talking in 2014, 2015. How can we start to rebuild the ties between the UK and Guyana again? And I'd like to go further and say that we've been turning into a mini America long before ExxonMobil found oil, by the way. If you look at the culture, if you look at the TV, if you listen to the music, how can we get back our ties with the UK? The British government have a very stern policy on fossil fuel, for those of you that have been following. The British Chamber of Commerce does not. The British Chamber of Commerce Guyana can do things and say things and lobby for things that the British government and High Commissioner Jane Miller in Guyana would support what I say. We can help you in a way that they cannot, simply because of the oil and gas policy. So if I may, and I'm cognizant I might not have answered your question directly, could I just have a show of hands? Who's actually interested in doing business in Guyana from the room right now? Okay, so we've got a good no. If you could keep your hand up, could you keep your hand up if you've been to Guyana in the last 12 months? Okay, so we have a good proportion of that. Because again, taking my BritCham hat off, and since I'm really glad to see we've got some heavyweight questions coming in, but if you get heavyweight questions coming, don't be surprised if you get some heavyweight answers coming back. What I'm sick and tired of, as the chairman of British Chamber of Commerce, is hearing from people saying, well, what's the government doing for us? What's ExxonMobil doing for us? And I say, okay, sir, okay, madam. Well, when was the last time you came to Guyana? Oh, well, I was there in 1984, and my cousin says, well, okay, well, it's a two-way street, guys. It's a two-way street. You're only going to find out about the opportunities if you're on the ground, okay? Relationships are very important, as we all know. Relationships take time to turn into trust. What the British Chamber of Commerce allows everybody in this room and the diaspora to do is fast track that and to plug in to, dare I say, CEOs in Guyana that understand British culture, understand Guyanese culture, and become your, I don't want to say fast track, but faster track to get into doing what you want to do. We might not be able to tell you what you should do, but I tell you what we could do. We can tell you what not to do. We can tell you what's going to waste your time and money. Rather than go and stand in that GRA queue for 3.5 hours, I'll give you a telephone number that you call today and get that paperwork moving. So I hope that, in a very long-winded way, answers the question.
You can see why Dragon's Den funded his project. Michelle, I just wanted to ask you, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, I think, first of all, it's way too late at night to talk about structural reformation and all the things that I normally speak about. So the only thing I would add to what Fazil said is that a diverse economy is very important for Guyana. The way that the world is moving with the global movement to decarbonization, with a nod to Alistair, of course, the oil and gas is here to do a purpose, a specific purpose, and that is to shore up the Guyanese economy for the future. In parallel to that, there must be a strong push towards diversification. The Caribbean breadbasket is a phrase I love, and I think if you are able to, if Guyana is able to employ and attract FDI into the country that shows how to do agriculture in a much more sustainable and innovative way, is a long way to go. Tech is high. So education in tech, I met a young lady today, Anita, who is hoping to go back to Guyana to do a program for the 5-year up in coding. I think that's a brilliant idea. So those are the projects that I think, and the sectors that I think we should actually push. I mean, I had a whole thing about structural transformation, but honestly, if I started that, you guys would be fast asleep in 5 minutes.
If I could, yeah, absolutely. If I could just reinforce some of those points on the agriculture side, even combining the two, so agriculture and technology to leverage agri-tech, so we increase our yields in Guyana. I mentioned very briefly the corn and soya project. There's another project that's about to get underway in the private sector. When you look at the imports, and if you want to get very specific, Guyana imports about 3 containers of black beans every single month into Guyana. Why are we importing 3 containers of black beans every single month when we could put the systems in play, put the right stakeholders together, and start producing 3 containers plus every single month, and then start exporting to the region? That's the only way we're going to end up being the breadbasket of the Caribbean.
Export diversification.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that. I would add to that agri-tourism. I'm always thinking that's something that, you know, with with the coconut plantations, there's a lot of scope for things like that.
Experiential tourism.
Experiential tourism, yeah. So, but I'm sort of interested, if the right choices then are made today, what do you see for Guyana 20 years from now? Maybe Raj, if you...
Look, I'm a positive guy. I'm future focused. I think Guyana is going to end up being a beacon to the world if the right decisions are made. People talk about the Dubai model. People talk about the Singapore model. I think in 20 years, if we do this right, we'll be talking about the Guyana model. And we have to ensure that we're all participating in that journey. I think it's really easy to sit back and be sort of an armchair analyst and find all the holes, and that's important. So we have to identify the problems before we can solve the problems. But I think it's critically important that we all participate. So I think if you look at how Guyana is getting positioned. Guyana is getting positioned for energy security, Guyana is getting positioned for climate security, and Guyana is getting positioned for food security. And I think if all goes well, we'll be able to tick the boxes on all three.
Yeah, no, just to follow on from that, I think, of course, in the capacity of the British Chamber of Commerce, I hope in 20 years' time you all are living in Guyana. And your children and your grandchildren, everybody's back, and rather than building other economies, we're building the Guyana economy. That's the BritCham answer. And then from a personal standpoint, I think it's a very exciting time right now. I take my friend in the second row's comments and questions, and I think they're important in these forums. What I would say is that I think. There's never going to be a cheaper time to invest in Guyana than right now. It's getting very expensive. I can show you land areas in residential areas that are up 300%. So if you're serious and you're thinking about it and you're able to, especially if you could raise capital in the UK at reasonable interest rates, because I tell you what, there are some very unreasonable interest rates in Guyana right now for capital investment, then yeah, I think now's the time.
I would second invest now, invest quickly. I think there are great opportunities, but mostly an intact Amazon would be my wish in 20 years.
Okay, next question. So in your view, what are the biggest challenges facing Guyana on this journey? If I can come back to you, actually, Michelle.
See, this is when I put people to sleep. I think it's about, this sounds like a very broken record, but it's about the use of the oil revenues. Oil revenues are there to shore up against shocks for future commodity swings and roundabouts. The oil revenues are not there to be the Guyana credit card of today. It's also there to make sure that there's inclusivity throughout the country. So no one should be left behind. And that means regional integration into the hinterlands, integration throughout Guyana. The whole phrase, no one should be left behind, should be like the calling card of Guyana. We are too fractured and diverse. We should be more together. So I think the challenges are that, how do you manage? Do you want to be a Nigeria and a Venezuela, or do you want to be a Norway and a Chile in terms of how you manage your commodity revenues? So I think that's a very serious thing, because if people look at the short-term use of oil revenues, then it can be used. I've seen it in countries where I have operated in Central Asia. It can be used to support autocracy. It can be used to divide a political spectrum. So I think the most important challenge is how you do that, and then behind that, you do all the things that will send you to sleep: structural reform, institutional capacity, and to Fazil's point, capacity, human capacity. So you all need to come back and actually work there, because 700 and something thousand people ain't going to do it.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And just to endorse what Michelle's saying, I'd like to acknowledge Mr. Craig Kelly in the front row, and he may recollect what I'm about to say here from February 2018, where Guyana had its first oil conference called I forget the brand it was under at that time. But a very prominent lawyer got on the stage and he says, I have to be very careful how I say this because it's my first time to Guyana, but he'd been there for a while. And what he went on to say is, he said, the Scandinavians for centuries have had to work together as a people for safety, for food, for business. He said his biggest worry about Guyana is we've never had to do that. So take from that what you will.
The Norway model.
I think one of the immediate challenges that we're currently facing, we simultaneously have one of the highest brain drain rates in the world, and at the same time, we have significant demand for more labor in Guyana. And so I think labor shortages are very real. If you look at the Qatar model, they've got 3-4 million people in Qatar. The population of native Qataris is 400,000 people, about 10% of the country. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen in Guyana, but,
I think we prefer the Guyanese to come back rather than...
yes, bring the diasporans back.
Indentured
Absolutely. So we need the diasporans to come back and to participate. I think some of the other areas have already been ventilated.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess, we want to finish at about, in the next 5 minutes or so. So I guess finally, my last question would be really, how has Guyana changed? Can you give us a sense of how Guyana has changed in the past few years since the discovery of oil? Faisal, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that for those that have been coming back to Guyana recently, I think you will have noticed since the oil find that there is infrastructure happening in the country. We have some roads that can take you quite comfortably from Mandela Avenue right up to Enmore these days. And I've actually purchased a property in Guyana at LBI, and I remember driving from Georgetown to LBI just a few years ago. You might as well have been going to Skeldon Berbice, how bumpy it was. It wasn't comfortable. So there's definitely that. You've got big international brands like the likes of Hard Rock Cafe and Starbucks in Guyana, which I'm not endorsing either of the brands. Of course, but it's you've got to come. Listen. Of course, you are correct, and you are entitled to agree. They are investing now. They've come and they're putting their money where their mouth is. So it's good to see that. I think, as I said, it's great to see Diaspora. I'm part of the Diaspora. Roche is part of the Diaspora. Neither of us, but you're a part of the Diaspora. Coming back and taking listen, being based in Guyana isn't easy. I've got a lot of pals that want to try and get back into Guyana from their comfortable apartment in Fulham and Chelsea, and well, that's not it. I want to use my colleague Alistair as example. Alistair lives in Guyana. ExxonMobil senior management, middle management, they live in the country, guys. So if they have to live in the country, why don't we? No.
Yeah, I think it's pretty evident to see, the changes that are taking place. To Faisal's point, I live in Guyana and I drive around Georgetown and I go, when did that building go up? And that happens constantly. And so you're seeing massive infrastructural changes. For those that have been, I'm happy to see the amount of hands that were raised earlier. For those that have been, you could feel the energy, you could feel the buzz. Things are active, things are happening in Guyana. And so, I think we're going to continue to see that trend continue.
Fantastic. Thank you. Just picking up from some what I think it was Faisal was saying about the comebackies, something that kind of... Have you not heard of comebackies? Okay. I was saying... today, you've heard the term comebackies
We
and
have
also
some persistent hands on the
diasporans.
floor. Yeah.
But I just, in terms of making sure that the people who didn't leave Guyana don't feel railroaded by the people who are returning, who kind of weren't there to fight the good fight while they're there. I mean, that's something that I'm just thinking about. But I want to throw out to the floor.
Yeah, so we have one here, and then we have two, and then three.
Okay, go for it.
Ladies and gentlemen, just to let you know, I am one of those that will be returning next month, but with 16 others. So 16 Guyanese people who were born and bred, live in the UK. We're actually going back next month with the lovely young man over there, Fayaz. So yes, we are, all 16 of us are very interested in terms of business and giving back to our people and building a better future for the generations to come.
Thank you.
That's really wonderful to hear. www.britchamgy.com.
We have here. So you get the question on this.
Right. Hi, I'm John Mayer. I have a very, very simple question. Faisal will know. The 1823 Monroe Doctrine. You're fighting it, aren't you? You and Roche. You don't stand a chance. Over to you.
Thank you, John. Ladies and gentlemen, John's actually a friend of mine, so you wouldn't believe that with the kind of question he's asking. But John actually asked that question in Georgetown when we first announced we were going to do the British Chamber. I can see a few of you Googling right now what the Monroe Doctrine is, and in a nutshell, it's the Americas trying to keep out British influence on decision making and other things. But look, John, 1823 was a long time ago, mate. Yeah.
Okay, Fayaz here again. Two things. The government promised 2 years ago a diaspora fund. Now, you guys are involved in business, and so can you give us an update what's happening with that, or can you have an influence to ensure that it does happen? Because some of us, we're getting negative interest over here, and perhaps in Guyana we can get something extra. The next question is, and I think I forget the next question.
Faisal will take this one, and then
Yeah, I'll come back.
I'll take that one, Mr. Fayez. So I think the best way you're going to get an answer to that is you become a member of BritCham. We're going to set you up as the chairperson of the Diaspora Fund Committee. We're going to lobby the government for a meeting, and we're going to get you that answer.
Okay, the next question is engagement of the diaspora. We don't have to go to Guyana to actually go and live in Guyana to actually contribute to Guyana's development. My personal example is I do so much charity work in Guyana from here, and I'm making a contribution. Why do we have to go to Guyana to do it? Isn't there a way that we can actually find a way? And today with remote, what should I say, working and so on, if you guys have some kind of, or the government has a kind of a think tank, and people like us can actually give ideas and suggestions, and so providing they actually take note of it. Because too often, for example, today I can't get in touch with Mr. Ramson because his email on the website is flawed. I can't get in touch with President Ali's office because the mailbox is full, right? So how do you really engage us? We can do it from here as well. We don't have to come and live in Guyana.
Well, just to say that that no one is a representative of the government, so at this point we want to have that be a general question.
But, if they're trying to engage us, can you not make representation to ensure that the systems are in place so we can be engaged?
Yes, so that's a better question. Now, colleagues, we have a hard stop on 9, and I know this definitely looked like it needed an extra hour, but many of you live here and understand the rules of labor for folks who actually work here, and the folks who are doing things have to get a hard stop on 9, and so I want to throw it back to our moderator to kind of bring our panel to a nice conclusion, and then we'll say thank you. I see there was one more question. Can we hold off on that one? Or actually, we didn't have women ask many questions, so Yeah. So we.
If I can, I have a question for the audience. And my question to the audience is, I noticed today that the kind of average age, I wouldn't say what it is, in here, but I'm really fascinated by the fact that we don't have the younger generation, second, third generation of Guyanese represented in the room. And I'd love, well, we've got one.
For those who
Maybe
feel
two.
offended by the question, there's only young and young at heart.
Yes. He's
I've
right
got
all
a
the
very
time.
quick
This is it.
question.
But
So I'm a bit schizophrenic, as in I'm very pro-business. My children will almost call me Thatcherite. But I've heard a lot here about pushing back to the people in Guyana, to the diaspora. The context is we've got a very small population in Guyana. We've got an enormous oil find. And I'm just a bit worried about the amount of pressure that's being put on the individual to step up. We're being told both that we should all sign up and get contracts with the oil companies, and we should invest in diversifying our economy. I mean, for people like me who don't sleep, that's fine, I could do all of that. But for your average person, and a lot of people in my family, they feel a kind of pressure, a kind of anxiety that if they're not contributing to the success of Guyana, that they don't deserve to share in the success. And I'd like to hear what the panel think about the average person who may not be awake all night trying to both take part in the oil economy and take part in the diversification.
thanks, Michelle.
Well, I think there is quite a large number of diaspora around the world, so I think that sharing that load shouldn't be a problem. And some people would want to invest in the ONG and the local context, and others will want to do what they specialize in, which are in other parts of the economy. So I think there's room for everyone. I guess I'll ask the guys from the ground.
No, I think if I understand the question correctly, I mean, if you recall my first statement, is that you're right. Guyana belongs to Guyanese at home and abroad. So, or to what I was saying earlier, if that was directed towards me, is for those that are looking to invest in the country. Look, I mean, I take Mr. Fires' point as well, and I'll tell you a little story for me personally. When I first decided to go back and do business in Guyana, I was in my early 20s, and I thought it very feasible to run a business in Guyana via Skype. And let's just say I got robbed blind, and then they told me another sad story after that. So you got to be there if you want to do business in Guyana. Yeah.
I was more thinking that there's a bit of an elephant in the room, as in the scale of the opportunity, the scale of the wealth in Guyana compared to the tiny population, when we're all being told that in order to participate in that benefit, we all have to become entrepreneurs, or we all have to become technicians, or whatever, which I'm happy to do, but I'm slightly concerned, and this is actually a question to both panels. I'm concerned about people who don't want to, people who might want to be in the music business or some other business, and want to live their life.
Yeah, of course. That's perfect. Yeah.
Wealth of Guyana. I'm just worried that people feel that unless they are part of one or other parts of the opportunity. I know this is a business conference, and we're talking about promoting business and how we can participate in business. But I wanted to ask actually, there's something very important about Guyana. It's a very tiny population, and we should.
Yeah.
I think people should all benefit, and that does not equal to a government handout.
Michelle, thank you so much for your comments there. That's something I'm sure we will continue talking about for a very long time. It's a very, very good and interesting point. I just want to end by saying I really loved with the way that you actually opened today's discussion with the whole issue of being part of the transformation, if we can, whether it's from here or within Guyana. But I love that you brought in the importance of heritage and identity and culture and it not just being about business. There are all these other things that we need to be thinking about. So I just want to say thank you so much, Michelle, Faisal, and also to you, Rosh, for your insights. It's been really, really interesting, and I, for one, am feeling a little bit more positive, which is quite unusual for me. So thank you very much, guys. I know. Thank you.
So, colleagues, we've gone to the end of the evening, and so I wanted to just say really a kind of word of gratitude. So first, just a nice round of applause for the panel here: Juanita, Rosh, Faisal, Michelle. The previous panel, Foreign Minister Greenidge, Ambassador Nsanali, and Mr. Rutledge, just to thank them for the insights that they shared here this evening. Thank you for the to Mr. Rutledge for the presentation, laying out some sense of, I guess the strategic priority. Where are we? The UK diaspora update, and really the sense of thinking that this has to be something that reflects a partnership between ExxonMobil and the Guyanese people. And the question is to think through what the contours of that partnership should look like in order that we all broadly benefit from this resource. I think, so thank you. Yeah, so our partners, David Lewis, Ern Alexander, Rod Mesmus, and let's just once again thank these organizations. Without these organizations, you just can't get it done. Right? You've noted, and you've noted that our colleague John Muir here has written these books. He's been writing these books of Oil Dorado, and I've contributed to one or two of these, and so I thought it a nice touch that we should have him sign some of these books and distribute them. And so you will find a number of signed copies, which you can take courtesy of John. And I promised John that he would be able to say 1 minute about his project. And so you have exactly 1 minute, because we're like 3 minutes from now.
I was a TV producer, so I go very fast. Right, I was born 73 years ago tomorrow at the Georgetown Public Hospital. So I'm as Guyanese as you are. Guyana is or was a very literate country. The chattering class, and even the chattered ones, loved a gaffe about current affairs in the market and the rump shop everywhere. Oil transforms us, our mother's land, whether we like it or not. Propels us from the second poorest country in the world to the second largest growing economy last year. So hence Oil Dorado. If you haven't bought one, here it is, £15 available down back there. It's a gap in print. People are allowed to put an opinion, various opinions from various points of view, and I pull it all together. I didn't write them, you write them. So there's been 5 editions, 50 authors have been given as a platform, as you Guyanese would say, to discuss oil intelligently. And there's a 6th edition planned in early 2024 with my friend Ambassador Nsanali. But the national oil debate has been, frankly, piss poor in Guyana. It really has been piss poor. It's never really started. Some of the Guyanese press has gone down a rabbit hole of almost hysterical criticism. Day after day, much of it is screeching little analysis. Another 10 seconds. The chattering classes are reduced to talking amongst themselves in Camp Street and on Zoom. It's a sad sight to behold, really. But the usual suspects move on to debate the debate not one iota. So let today and so many events start that debate. What sort of Guyana do you want? What can plenty oil riches bring to all of us in Guyana? A chance to build an Oil Dorado. Grab it with both hands. My Dutch, my French, my British, my Guyanese ancestors, dating back 2 centuries, in case you didn't know, would expect little else. They'd be very happy to see Guyana in bloom. So on with the debate, on with posterity, on with, I'm 73 years young, Oil Dorado is only 4 years old.
Thank you, John. And let me just say on behalf of all of us gathered here, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Can you just lift the book up? Yeah.
John says he's buying it.
And no, we've already distributed the book and he signed them, and you just have to take them home. Oh, he's buying drinks, yes. There's a hotel around the corner.
I've got 8 spare copies if anybody wants to buy one at £15.
We're not going to twist our hands on that. And so now we're about 1 minute left, and I just wanted to mention one last thought. There is one of our colleagues, David Roberts from Carib Direct, and David is sort of planning a conference which would kind of offer more detail than we've rushed there. And so, David, I wondered if you could just take like 1 minute, not a John Mayer minute, but like 1 minute, just to say, just a short bit about the conference. You don't have to push anything, you just have to speak.
Just speak, yeah?
Just speak.
All right, fantastic. Yeah, I won't compete with John. Nobody should try that. Yes, I'm David Roberts. I've been running CaribDirect.com for the past 13 years. It's an online blog that basically keeps Guyanese and other Caribbeans in the UK in the know in terms of what's happening across the region and what's important to us here in the UK. I'm wearing another hat, and it's involving sustainability. So I'm putting on, well, my team and I are putting on an event on the 3rd and 4th of October. It's called the Guyana Diaspora Sustainability and Investment Conference. And many of the issues that were raised here today that we weren't able to cover or to touch on, we intend to look at that conference. And that conference is supported by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We're working with Go Invest, as well as the Ministry of Natural Resources, so that we can get some insights on what's happening across the development spectrum in Guyana. So basically, I think this is something that may be of use to you in terms of your deepened interest in these areas. And I'd like you to contact me, and if it's entirely within your interest, you can come down to a very nice and well-appointed venue on the 3rd and 4th of October, and we can discuss all of these issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes. And so, colleagues, for the good of the order, is there anyone left with a burning question that needs to be addressed? And I say no, and I say, wait, there's one thing. I want to thank everyone here in the audience for being here, and take a moment to give yourselves a round of applause. You are the diaspora who this was conceived for.
That really wasn't a good enough round of applause. And I have to say, thank you so much to Dr. Terence Blackman for organizing this event. An absolutely fantastic, really brilliantly put together event. So we're really grateful to you for coming here from the US, for doing everything. It's just been amazing. So thank you so much. Please put your hands together again. Louder. Grateful.
Should we move this out of the way, Tony? Yeah, I think we should. Should we move this out of the way?